The jungle world of Cyrillese had a pulse of its own. The trees glowed faintly with bioluminescent veins, and the thick mist carried a scent of damp earth and alien flowers. Every sound felt amplified. The snap of a twig, the soft hum of insects, and the occasional low growl that reminded anyone who listened that they were not the only creatures here. It was beautiful, but it was dangerous. Most humans would have avoided such a place, yet Elara had chosen it, not out of bravery, but out of duty. She had been sent to guard the Linthari cubs, creatures as rare as they were strange. To the untrained eye, they looked like oversized kittens with sleek fur that shimmered in patterns according to their moods. Their eyes glowed softly, amber in color, and their small claws were sharper than a human fingernail. Though small, they carried an air of wild confidence that warned predators to stay away. Humans revered them for one reason. Their survival ensured the balance of Cyrillis's ecosystem. Without them, the jungle might collapse, prey overrun by predator, or vice versa. Elara crouched in the thick undergrowth, her rifle resting lightly on her shoulder. The cubs played nearby, tumbling over each other with awkward joy. One had chased a small glowing beetle into a hollow log and emerged covered in sticky sap, shaking it off with a frustrated hiss. Elara laughed softly, a sound the cubs seemed to recognize, because they froze, ears twitching, and then resumed their play more cautiously. She was tired, but there was a satisfaction in watching them. She felt a strange connection, not just because she had been trained to protect them, but because they reminded her of something fundamental about humanity, the need to care, even when the stakes were high. The first night was always the hardest. The jungle seemed alive in ways that made her skin crawl. Shadows moved where no light could reach, and the soft whisper of leaves sounded almost like voices. Elara had learned to interpret the environment through tiny signs: the broken branch that meant a predator passed recently, the paw prints in the damp soil, the distant howl that meant another hunter was near. She had been trained for survival, yes, but training was one thing. Experiencing it in a living, breathing alien jungle was entirely another. She moved closer to the cubs, kneeling beside them, her hands gentle as she brushed a strand of sticky sap from the fur of the cub covered in it. The cub purred, a sound deeper than any earthly cat, and nuzzled her hand. Elara smiled, feeling the warmth of it spread through her chest. In these moments, the world beyond Cyrillus, the world of human politics, missions, and distant wars, felt far away. Here it was just her and the cubs, the jungle, and the silent waiting danger that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Hours passed. The cubs grew tired and clustered around her for warmth. Elara's eyelids grew heavy. She had been awake for too long, patrolling and observing, alert to every sound, every movement. She reminded herself that humans were resilient, that no predator on this planet would underestimate the tenacity of a human. She had seen humans survive worse conditions: harsh deserts, frozen wastelands, and oceans that threatened to swallow them whole. Still, the human body had its limits, and her body was screaming for rest. She allowed herself a brief moment, lying back against a massive root, the cubs forming a warm circle around her. Their soft purring vibrated through her chest, almost like a heartbeat in sync with her own. She closed her eyes, planning to rest only for a few minutes. Minutes turned into half an hour. The jungle around her seemed to sigh in response, the night noises blending into a lullaby that was both alien and comforting. Yet, even in sleep, the instincts she had honed over years remained alert. Her dreams were fragmented. Visions of enormous predators gliding through the trees, their eyes locked on the cubs. She felt herself moving through the mist, her hands reaching for the cubs, pulling them to safety. Her heart pounded, waking her briefly, only to realize it had been a dream. Still, the unease lingered, a reminder that the jungle did not forgive mistakes. Somewhere above, the branches shivered. A shadow moved with a grace that was terrifying and majestic all at once. Elara's senses tingled even in her sleep, a whisper of recognition that this was not a normal predator. She opened her eyes slowly, trying not to startle the cubs. A pair of glowing eyes stared at her from the canopy. They were large, intelligent, and calculating. The jungle fell silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The cubs sensed it too. Their purring slowed, ears flattening against their heads, tails curling protectively around each other. Elara could feel the tension radiating from them. She sat up, muscles coiled, and tried to make herself appear calm. She knew the danger. The apex predators of Cyrillus were legends, creatures that ruled the jungle without question. No other species, no matter how fierce, dared challenge them. And yet this one seemed curious, not aggressive. Its shadow stretched across the ground, a moving darkness that felt almost alive. Elara remembered the lessons from her training. Do not run, do not panic, do not provoke. She kept her hands visible, low, and steady. The cubs pressed closer to her, their warmth a comforting shield against the unknown. The apex tilted its head, watching her with an almost human-like intelligence. It was assessing her. She had heard stories of the apex choosing prey, choosing allies, even sparing those it considered worthy. She prayed silently that humans counted among the worthy. The jungle held its breath. A small leaf fell between Elara and the apex, a trivial sound that somehow carried the weight of the world. She exhaled slowly, not wanting to startle it. For a moment there was only the sound of purring, and then the apex shifted, a low growl rolling through its chest. Not a threat, but a warning. Elara understood. She would need to earn its respect, not through weapons, but through courage, patience, and understanding. Hours stretched on. The apex did not leave. It circled above, observing, learning, perhaps even judging. Elara did not move from her position. The cubs remained close, sensing the tension but trusting her instinct. She whispered softly to them, not because she expected them to understand, but because the sound of her voice seemed to anchor the moment. "It's okay. Stay calm. Don't run." Time became meaningless in the jungle. The glow of the bioluminescent trees shifted as the night deepened. Elara stayed vigilant, though exhaustion pressed against her like a physical weight. Her eyes scanned every shadow, every branch, every flicker of movement. She was aware of every predator's scent, every whisper of wind, every subtle vibration in the roots beneath her. Humans were small, but we see, she thought. We feel, we endure. That made us formidable. Perhaps that was why she was still here, still breathing, still watching. Eventually, the apex moved closer, lowering its massive frame to the ground with grace. The cubs shrank back slightly, but Elara did not flinch. She knew this was a test, not of strength, but of character. The apex sniffed the air, its eyes flicking between her and the cubs. It made no move to attack, yet the power in its presence was undeniable. Every hair on her arm stood on end. Every instinct screamed to run, but she remained. Humans were not the fastest or the strongest, but we survived through strategy, through empathy, through resolve. That was her edge here. She extended a hand slowly, a gesture of peace. The cubs pressed closer to her, forming a living barrier between her and the apex. She whispered, "You won't find weakness here, only patience and care." The apex's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in contemplation. The jungle around them seemed to hum with quiet intensity, as if the world recognized this moment as extraordinary. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had no meaning in this waiting game. The apex shifted slightly, tilting its head again. The cubs responded with soft purrs, cautious yet unafraid. Elara felt a strange sense of hope. Perhaps humans had a place here after all, not as hunters but as guardians, not as conquerors, but as allies. As dawn approached, the light of Cyrillus filtered through the canopy in golden streaks. The jungle's pulse slowed with the coming day. The apex, massive and commanding, retreated into the shadows for now. Ilara exhaled, her muscles trembling from tension and relief. The cubs, sensing the moment of reprieve, snuggled closer, their purrs filling the quiet space. Ilara smiled, brushing a paw of one cub gently. She had survived the first night, not through force, but through understanding. The jungle had tested her, and humans had passed. Her duty was far from over, but she felt the truth of something greater. On Cyrillus, human courage and patience could shine even in the face of apex predators. And somewhere in the jungle, the apex watched still, its intelligent eyes never leaving her. The night had given way to an early, misty dawn, but the jungle of Cyrillus was far from quiet. The air hummed with life. Alien insects droned, leaves rustled in a gentle wind, and distant calls of creatures echoed through the glowing foliage. Ilara's senses were sharpened, every sound and movement in the jungle carrying a hidden meaning. She had survived her first night, but the apex predator had not left. Its presence lingered like a shadow woven into the mist, invisible yet palpable, and Ilara felt it everywhere. The cubs were restless, exploring cautiously around her. One of them, a small, silver-furred creature, scampered over a fallen log and nearly fell into a shallow pool. Ilara reached out instinctively, catching it just in time. She set it back down, smiling despite the tension. "Careful," she whispered. "Not everything here is safe, even for you." The cub mewed, blinking its glowing eyes up at her, and she felt a strange warmth in her chest. They trusted her. That trust was a responsibility heavier than any weapon she had carried. She moved slowly through the jungle, her rifle ready, though she doubted it would do much against the apex. She had learned that brute force meant little here. Strategy, observation, and calm were her tools. The apex was more than a predator. It was intelligent, calculating, and patient. It was not like the other threats of the planet that could be predicted or scared off. This one watched, learned, and waited. And humans, she knew, were capable of surprising even the most cunning creatures when they were patient and clever. As she walked, she noticed the small signs of the apex's movement. Broken branches, deep paw prints pressed into the damp soil, and the subtle vibrations that passed through the ground when it moved. It was massive, far larger than any earthly feline, with a body built for power and silence. Every instinct she had screamed caution, but she knew that fear alone would not keep the cubs safe. Humans survived because they could think, because they could act, even when the odds were impossible. The cubs stayed close, forming a protective cluster around her. Ilara kept one hand on their fur as they moved, feeling their warmth and the quiet rhythm of their purring. It was a strange, comforting sound. In the alien world, a reminder that not all things here were threats. The apex had circled her once more during the night, never attacking, but its eyes were everywhere. Ilara could feel them, burning through the mist, intelligent and watchful. Hours later, she found herself near a small clearing. The sunlight filtered through the canopy in shards of gold, glinting on the wet leaves. The cubs paused, sniffing the air, ears twitching. A low growl rumbled somewhere above the treetops, soft but unmistakable. Ilara froze, heart racing. The apex was near. She didn't move, didn't breathe more than necessary, and allowed the cubs to sense her calm. In this world, humans were small and physically weak, but our patience and observation were unmatched. The apex descended into the clearing slowly, muscles coiling with precision, its massive frame moving without a sound despite its size. Its fur was dark, almost blending with the shadows, but the gleam of its eyes was unmistakable. It stopped a few meters from her, watching. Ilara took a slow breath, keeping her body relaxed, her movements deliberate. The cubs hissed softly, forming a line between her and the predator. Their purring deepened, a strange resonance that seemed almost to communicate something to the apex. It tilted its head, studying them, then her. She could feel its intelligence probing, as if it were trying to understand what kind of creature humans were. It was not an ordinary predator. The apex had survived countless battles, ruled this jungle for decades, and yet it hesitated. Elara understood why. Humans were different. They were unpredictable, capable of empathy and strategy in ways that few other species could comprehend. Even the apex, with all its experience, had to recognize that unpredictability as a form of strength. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Elara remained still, every muscle coiled but calm. The cubs pressed against her legs, trusting her implicitly. She spoke softly to them, her voice low and steady. "Stay calm," she said. We will get through this." The apex did not move, but the low rumble in its throat shifted, almost like contemplation. Then, without warning, a smaller predator darted from the underbrush, a snapping beast that had clearly not recognized the apex. Its teeth gleamed, and it lunged at one of the cubs. Elara reacted instantly, grabbing a branch and swinging it with precision. The small predator skidded back, snarling, and the cub darted out of danger. The apex's eyes flicked toward the intruder, then back at Elara. It had intervened, not with attack, but with a presence that stopped the smaller predator in its tracks. Elara realized something remarkable. The apex was not just a hunter, it was a judge, a guardian of its territory, and perhaps in its own way, it respected her for defending the cubs. Humans had survived through resilience, empathy, and intelligence, and now the apex was learning to see that in her. The smaller predator fled, disappearing into the jungle, and the apex relaxed slightly, lowering its massive shoulders. It was still watchful, still powerful, but no longer threatening. Elara exhaled slowly, though she remained alert. Trust in this world was fragile, and even the smallest mistake could bring death. Yet for the first time she felt a strange connection with the creature before her. Hours passed as the sun climbed higher. The jungle remained alive with noises, calls of distant birds, the rustle of unseen animals, the hum of the glowing flora. But the apex did not leave. It circled slowly, moving through the shadows, always observing. Elara realized that patience was her strongest weapon. She did not need to attack, did not need to fight. The jungle itself had shown her that understanding, calm, and courage could create safety where none seemed possible. As the day wore on, the cubs grew curious, edging closer to the apex despite their initial caution. One stepped forward, small paws making no sound, and reached toward the predator. The apex lowered its massive head, watching, not moving, allowing the gesture. Elara held her breath, knowing that one wrong move could trigger violence. But nothing happened. The cub withdrew, brushing against her leg, safe and unharmed. Elara felt a surge of hope. Humans were small, but they had something that predators like the apex could not measure by strength alone. They had heart, they had empathy. They had courage that was not loud or violent, but steadfast and unwavering. The cubs had sensed it in her, and now, perhaps, the apex was beginning to sense it too. As evening approached, the jungle shifted once more. Shadows lengthened, and the mist thickened. The apex remained nearby, still massive, still intelligent, still formidable. But it did not attack. Elara knew this was only a temporary peace, a fragile understanding that had taken hours of careful patience to earn. Yet it was something no weapon could give her. Something uniquely human. The cubs nestled against her as she sat beneath a massive tree. She felt the warmth of their small bodies, their steady purring, and she knew that, at least for now, they were safe. The apex lingered at the edge of the clearing, massive and silent, a living shadow among the glowing trees. Elara watched it with respect, knowing that this creature, the apex of Seralis, had chosen not to strike. In some strange way, that choice had been influenced by her presence, by her calm and courage. she whispered softly to the cubs. "We survived today. We can survive tomorrow, too." The cubs responded with small purrs, almost as if agreeing. Alara felt a quiet determination settle over her. The jungle was dangerous, wild, and unpredictable, but humans had something extraordinary: the ability to endure, to adapt, and to inspire even the fiercest creatures to pause and consider. Night was falling again, and the jungle's pulse deepened. The apex disappeared into the mist, leaving the clearing with an unspoken warning: respect the jungle, respect life, and survival would continue. Alara remained with the cubs, alert but calm, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests, and more lessons. But she was ready. Humans survived, not because they were the strongest, but because they could endure, observe, and act with both mind and heart. And somewhere in the shadows, the apex watched still, its intelligent eyes never leaving her or the cubs. The night air of Siralis was thick with mist, and the jungle seemed to breathe around Alara. Every leaf glistened, every shadow shifted, and every sound carried a weight she could feel in her bones. The cubs huddled close, their small bodies trembling slightly, but purring, a steady, vibrating sound that was both comforting and strange in the alien darkness. Alara's eyes scanned the trees, alert for even the slightest movement. The apex predator had vanished at dusk, but she knew it was still out there, watching, waiting, learning. She moved carefully through the underbrush, her hand brushing against the luminescent plants, leaving faint streaks of glowing color in her wake. The cubs followed, playful yet cautious, their small eyes flicking nervously at every shifting shadow. The jungle was alive in ways that reminded her humans were small and fragile, but it also reminded her of why humans survived. Observation, patience, courage. These were her weapons, far sharper than any tool she carried. A sudden rustle above made her freeze. The apex had returned. Hey! Its massive form slipped silently between the branches, a shadow within shadows. Its eyes glowed faintly in the mist, intelligent and calculating. Alara did not move, did not even breathe more than necessary. The cubs pressed against her legs, instinctively, their purring growing deeper, almost as if they were communicating with the predator. The apex lowered its head, sniffing the air, its eyes locked on her, then the cubs. It circled slowly, the ground barely trembling beneath its enormous paws. Alara felt her pulse quicken, but she reminded herself that humans had survived worse than this. The apex was powerful, but it could be understood. It observed patterns, learned behavior, and respected courage. Her task was clear. She could not fight it with weapons, but she could act with wisdom and empathy. She knelt slowly, keeping her movements deliberate, and extended a hand toward the cubs. They hesitated but followed her gesture, pressing closer for warmth. "We mean no harm," she whispered softly. "Not to the apex, but to the jungle itself. We only wish to protect the young. That is all." The apex paused, its massive head tilting slightly. It seemed to consider her words, though they were silent, carried only in tone and action. The jungle pulsed with tension. Somewhere in the distance, a smaller predator growled and retreated at the hint of the apex's presence. The cubs responded instinctively, hissing softly and curling closer to her. Alara understood. Humans were small and fragile, yet their patience, courage, and presence commanded a quiet respect even from apex predators. She let the moment stretch, allowing the apex to observe without interference. After a long pause, the apex stepped closer, lowering itself to the ground. Its eyes never left Alara or the cubs, yet there was no aggression, only curiosity and assessment. The cubs inched forward tentatively, one of them brushing against her leg before daring a step closer to the massive creature. The apex did not move. It watched, its breathing steady, its muscles coiled but relaxed. Alara realized the moment was unique. The apex, the dominant predator of this world, was studying her. It was considering her not as prey, but as something else. A guardian, a creature unlike the others that inhabited Cyrillus. Humans were unpredictable in ways that few other species could measure, and she hoped the apex recognized that. The cubs sensed it too, their purring soft but insistent, creating a rhythm that seemed almost like a language. Then the unexpected happened. One of the cubs, braver than the others, stepped forward fully and touched the apex's massive paw with its tiny claws. The apex froze, watching, and then lowered its head further, sniffing the small creature. It did not strike, did not move aggressively. It simply observed. Elara felt a flicker of hope. Trust was fragile in this world, and humans had earned small victories not through force, but through patience and courage. The jungle shifted around them, as if it recognized the extraordinary moment. Sounds of distant predators softened, the usual rustle of leaves seemed to pause, and the faint glow of bioluminescent plants shimmered brighter. Elara spoke softly to the cubs, guiding them gently, encouraging them without force. "Careful," she whispered. "The apex is watching." "Stay calm," the cubs responded, their purring a steady anchor that seemed to resonate with the apex itself. Hours passed. The apex remained near, following them silently, never attacking, always watching. Elara led the cubs through the jungle, finding small clearings with water and shelter, observing every detail for signs of other predators. She taught the cubs subtly how to hide, how to sense danger, how to move without making noise. The apex watched these lessons, sometimes stopping to study the human and cubs with curiosity that bordered on fascination. Elara understood something profound. Humans were small, but they survived not because of size or strength, but because of understanding. She could see patterns the apex did not anticipate, could act with a balance of caution and boldness, and could connect with the cubs in ways the predator could not. In a way, this was what made humans remarkable, the ability to endure, adapt, and inspire respect through courage and empathy. As the sun dipped lower, shadows deepened in the jungle. Elara found a small clearing beneath the twisted roots of a massive tree and decided to rest briefly. The cubs curled around her, their soft purring creating a strange harmony in the alien night. The apex settled nearby, a dark silhouette against glowing flora, eyes never leaving them. It was patient, intelligent, and formidable, yet it did not attack. Perhaps it was recognizing something in humans it had not seen before. The capacity to protect without harming, to endure without fear. The night stretched on. A distant howl echoed through the trees, signaling a smaller predator moving within the apex's territory. The cubs stiffened, and Elara's hand rested on their backs, reassuring them. The apex shifted its massive shoulders, letting out a low, resonant growl that sent the intruder fleeing. The cubs relaxed again, their purring steady. Elara smiled faintly. Humans were small, but their presence here, their courage and patience, had created a fragile safety. She spoke softly to the apex, not expecting an answer. "We are not your enemies," she said. "We protect the young. We survive through understanding, not violence." The predator's eyes met hers, intelligent and unblinking, and for a moment Elara felt a connection that transcended words. It was recognition, a silent acknowledgement that humans, though small and fragile, had earned a place here, even among apex predators. The cubs began to explore the clearing cautiously, brushing against the apex's legs with curiosity. Elara stayed close, guiding them with gentle hands and soft words. She knew the jungle was unpredictable. Even a moment's carelessness could bring death. Yet the apex did not strike, it simply observed, a silent guardian in its own right. Hours passed into early morning. Mist clung to the ground and the glowing flora shifted as the light changed. The cubs grew tired, curling around her for warmth. Elara rested her head against the massive roots, feeling the rhythm of their purring and the quiet presence of the apex nearby. For the first time, she allowed herself a moment of peace. Humans were small, but they endured. Humans could survive, even in a world ruled by apex predators, not through force alone, but through courage, patience, and empathy. The jungle whispered around them. The apex shifted slightly, acknowledging her presence without aggression. The cubs responded with soft purrs, trusting the moment, trusting her. Alara realized that survival here was not just about avoiding death. It was about creating a balance, understanding the rhythm of the world, and finding one's place within it. She whispered to the cubs, "Tomorrow, we continue. We watch, we learn, we survive." The cubs purred in agreement, pressing against her warmth. Somewhere in the mist, the apex remained, a shadow and a guardian, intelligent and observant, silently acknowledging the human who had earned a place among the purring shadows. Night deepened again, and the jungle's pulse slowed with the rhythm of life. Alara stayed awake, alert but calm, the cubs safe for now, and the apex watching over them in its silent, majestic way. She understood that humans were small, fragile, and yet extraordinary. In the heart of this alien jungle, through patience, courage, and understanding, she had created a fragile bond, a moment of trust that might change the jungle forever. And as she drifted into a light, careful sleep, she knew that tomorrow would bring new tests, new dangers, and new lessons. But humans endured. Humans survived. And sometimes, even apex predators recognize the quiet strength of those willing to face the wild with patience, empathy, and courage. The first light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy of Surrelis, casting golden streaks across the misty jungle floor. Alara stirred, her body stiff from the long night, yet her mind was alert. The cubs were already awake, their tiny paws kneading the soft undergrowth as they stretched and yawned. They looked at her with bright, trusting eyes, and she smiled, brushing a paw gently. Their purring filled the clearing, a steady, rhythmic sound that seemed to echo the pulse of the jungle itself. The apex had not moved far. It rested nearby, a massive shadow among the glowing trees, its eyes calm yet watchful. Alara had learned to read its presence as carefully as she read the jungle around her. It was not an immediate threat, but it remained the ruler of this territory, intelligent and patient, a living reminder of the power and danger inherent in Cyrillus. Yet she felt a strange connection with it now, a recognition that humans, small as they were, could earn a place even among the apex predators of this world. Alara stood slowly, careful not to startle the apex or the cubs. She needed to move them to a safer part of the jungle, one with water and shelter. She had spent the past days learning the rhythm of this place, understanding the patterns of predators and prey, the flow of the streams and the hidden dangers in the dense undergrowth. Humans survived not because of brute strength, she reminded herself, but because of patience, observation, and adaptability. The cubs followed, playful yet cautious, stepping carefully over glowing roots and fallen logs. Alara kept her hand near them, guiding them and teaching them without words. "Stay close," she whispered. "Watch carefully. Remember the sounds and shadows. Learn to move with the jungle, not against it." Their purring responded, a soft vibration that seemed to reassure both her and the apex, who followed silently at a distance. As they moved, the jungle revealed its dangers. A swarm of flying predators emerged, their wings beating with a sharp, slicing sound that cut through the air. The cubs froze, instinctively crouching, but Alara acted calmly. She guided them behind a thick tree trunk, brushing the smallest against her side to keep them safe. The apex moved smoothly, a silent shadow, its presence alone enough to scatter the intruders. Alara observed, realizing that even the mightiest predator recognized her vigilance and careful strategy. Humans were not strong in size, but in mind and heart, they could influence the world around them. Hours passed as they moved through the jungle. The cubs learned to navigate hidden streams, avoid thorned plants, and sense subtle vibrations in the ground that hinted at nearby danger. Alara encouraged them gently, never rushing, never showing fear. The apex followed, silent and majestic, sometimes pausing to observe the cub's behavior. It did not attack. It did not need to. Its presence alone taught lessons in caution and respect. By midday, they reached a hidden grove, a sheltered place with soft moss, a small stream, and towering trees that offered protection from the harsh sun. Alara settled the cubs, letting them drink from the stream and explore cautiously under her watchful eye. She breathed deeply, feeling a rare moment of relief. The jungle was still dangerous, but for now they had a safe haven. The apex approached the clearing slowly, its massive paws silent on the mossy ground. The cubs huddled, but Alara did not move away. She stood tall, hands visible, showing no fear. The apex paused, lowering its massive head to study her. Its eyes, intelligent and unblinking, seemed to understand something profound. It was recognition. The human had earned its respect, not through force, not through threats, but through courage, patience, and a steady heart. Alara extended a hand slowly. A gesture of peace. The apex shifted, sniffing the air. Then the cubs. One cub, braver than the rest, stepped forward and touched the apex's paw. It was a delicate moment, and Alara held her breath. The apex did not react aggressively. Instead, it lowered itself slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the trust being offered. Humans were small, yet they carried qualities the jungle valued: resilience, empathy, and the courage to protect life, even when surrounded by danger. The day wore on, and a fragile routine formed. Alara tended to the cubs, teaching them, guiding them, keeping them safe. The apex remained nearby, an imposing yet silent presence. It did not threaten, but it observed. Its intelligence was evident in every movement, the way it studied the cubs, assessed the terrain, and even noted Alara's patterns. She realized something extraordinary. This apex predator was learning from her, not as a hunter might learn from prey, but as an observer learning respect for another being. Evening came, and the jungle shifted once more. Mist crept over the stream, and the glowing flora cast long, shifting shadows. Alara guided the cubs into the shelter of a large tree root, and they nestled close, purring softly. She felt a quiet pride. Humans were not the strongest, but they endured. They adapted. They protected. And sometimes, even the most powerful predators recognized that strength was not measured in size or teeth, but in courage and heart. The apex approached the clearing fully now, massive and silent. It lowered itself beside the cubs, its dark fur a stark contrast against their lighter tones. Alara held her breath, unsure of what it would do. The cubs did not flinch, trusting her, trusting the quiet judgment of this creature. The apex reached out, brushing a paw gently against one cub, almost as if it were acknowledging their bond. Alara's eyes met its glowing gaze, and she felt an unspoken understanding pass between them. This was a moment of triumph, not through violence, but through empathy. The apex had recognized her as a protector, a being capable of patience and strategy. The cubs were safe not because of fear, but because humans could endure, inspire trust, and act with courage even when surrounded by predators. Alara had proven that small beings could influence the wildest places, that humans could hold their ground without weapons, without brute force, simply through heart and intelligence. Night fell again, and the jungle's pulse slowed. Stars shimmered faintly through the gaps in the canopy, and the bioluminescent plants glowed softly, painting the scene with a magical light. Alara rested beside the cubs, her hand brushing them gently, feeling the steady rhythm of their purring. The apex curled nearby, its massive body forming a protective barrier, a shadow that promised caution and respect. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We survived. Together." The cubs responded with small, vibrating purrs. The jungle, vast and dangerous, seemed to settle around them, recognizing the fragile alliance that had formed. Humans were small, yet remarkable. Their courage and empathy had carved a place in a world ruled by predators. The following days continued with careful routine. Elara taught the cubs more about the jungle, always under the watchful eyes of the apex. It followed silently, never interfering, yet always observing. Other predators learned to respect the presence of this human and the cubs, understanding that the apex tolerated them, and to challenge that presence would be foolish. Slowly, a delicate balance formed. The human and the apex, once predator and potential prey, became guardians of the cubs together. Elara realized that survival on Seralis was not about domination. It was about understanding, about observing patterns, about respecting life in all its forms. Humans had survived through resilience, intelligence, and courage, and here, in the heart of the alien jungle, those qualities had earned her respect from even the most formidable predator. One evening, as the sun set behind the glowing canopy, the apex rose and moved to the edge of the clearing. Its massive head turned toward her, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a gesture of farewell, or perhaps acknowledgement of their shared purpose. The cubs hissed softly, then settled back, trusting her judgment. She watched as the predator disappeared into the shadows, not as a threat, but as a silent sentinel, a reminder of the jungle's rules and the delicate balance they had achieved. Elara looked down at the cubs, their glowing eyes filled with trust and curiosity. "We will continue," she whispered. "We will survive, we will learn, and we will protect each other." They responded with soft, vibrating purrs, a comforting sound that promised continuity and life. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humans were not the strongest, but they were resilient, intelligent, and capable of building bonds that even apex predators could respect. As night fell, Elara sat with the cubs nestled around her, the soft glow of the flora casting gentle light over their small forms. The jungle was alive, vibrant, and dangerous, yet she felt a profound peace. She had proven that humans could endure, could inspire trust, and could survive through courage and empathy alone. The apex remained in the distance, watching silently, a guardian of its own kind, acknowledging the human who had faced the wild without fear. In that moment, she understood something essential. Survival was not about dominance or power. It was about connection, understanding, and courage. Humans were small, yet extraordinary. Their strength lay not in claws or teeth, but in the heart and mind. And on this alien world she had shown that humanity could thrive, even among purring shadows and apex predators, by protecting what mattered and by never yielding to fear. Elara closed her eyes, the cubs nestled safely against her, and allowed herself a deep, quiet breath. The jungle continued its rhythm, alive with life, danger, and beauty. And somewhere in the mist, the apex watched still, its intelligent eyes never leaving the human or the cubs. A bond had been formed, a fragile, extraordinary alliance born of courage, patience, and the quiet power of the human heart. Humans were small, humans were fragile, but humans endured, and sometimes that was enough to earn respect from even the most fearsome creatures in the universe.